Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome. We are very excited to have you here with us as we dive into our Parashat Tetzaveh. Welcome. I am very honored to be here. I am Rabbi Heidi Cohen with HaNefesh and Jew by You. And with me is my colleague. Hello, Nico. How are you?
Shalom, Rabbi Cohen. How are you?
I am good. Shalom, Rabbi Nico. All right. We have also, though, a very special guest who is joining us because, we like to kind of round out with Torah, and he has been doing so much work with us, with the Board of Rabbis, in producing this and making us look fabulous and sound amazing. And so we are honored to have joining with us. Hello, Josh Friedman. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, rabbis. I am honored to be here. I think I'm the first non-rabbi to be in the series, and I appreciate that. But as you mentioned, I've been behind the scenes producing every single episode. I personally consider this my favorite Torah study I've ever attended, and because I attend all of them as I produce the show. So I thank you guys for inviting me today. I am actually here accompanied by my head of office security, Yogi. He may pop in and out of the show occasionally. And also want to explain I'm wearing headphones because I am producing the show while doing this. So for audio, I have to wear them. And also, if anybody notices me looking to the side, it's because I have a switchboard on my right side over here, switching for the show as well. So I'm not ignoring the rabbis. I'm fully paying attention on multiple screens.
Look at all that information, all those things that you are dealing with. And I think we wouldn't recognize you without the headphones. So I'm glad you are wearing them. So Josh is our producer. And as Heidi was saying, there are lots of things that are related to production in this Torah portion.
Yeah.
I want to get started with something that also has to do with Josh's presence and absence. And it's that Moses, the name of Moses is not in this Torah portion. Moses is there. His name is not there. And of course, the fact that he's present and absent is a topic of discussion for our rabbis. A commentary that I find particularly interesting is by Balaturim, who says that one Torah portion later, Moses says to God, if you are not going to forgive them, if you are not going to forgive their iniquity, as we say later on, probably many of you remember that in Yom Kippur, after Kol Nidrei, we say, Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. And God said, I have forgiven them according to your will, according to your request. And that's a response to Moses' request for forgiveness for the children of Israel. The Midrash says that Moses also tells God, if you don't forgive them, forget. Tishkach mimeni. Forget me. I don't want to be a part of this Torah. I don't want to be there. And so the Torah goes back to the past, according to this idea and this Midrash, and Moses' name is not there. And I was thinking about the courage of being behind the scenes, the courage that takes to say also, if that's the direction that this is going to take, I don't want to be a part of this. And I was thinking about the word that you, Rabbi Cohen, taught me years ago, the word FOMO.
There you go. You got
FOMO, the phobia of missing out, right? We are so excited, so curious to be involved, to see. And it takes lots of self-work and courage to step back and say, I am willing to miss out. I understand that I might not know something, that I might not experience something, but I'm willing to miss out, right? Like we are the society, the generation of people that never miss out, right? We are all the time connected. We know everything. We are the generation of information. Mm-hmm. We can't imagine the world without us knowing everything about what's happening. And Moses is here saying, I'm very involved. I feel lots of ownership. And because of that, I'm not afraid of missing out. I think it's very powerful.
I agree. I do think it is very powerful, that a whole idea of Moses taking a step back. However, I would like to kind of challenge a little bit with it, that he's not necessarily saying that he wants to miss out or that he's willing to miss out. Rather, he is saying, I'm willing to take a step back, allow Aaron, allow his sons, allow this to play out, and allow me to be in the background, to be observing, to be producing, to be a part of this, but not necessarily the one who is in the forefront.
Beautiful observation.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful observation. I like to throw you something out there.
Okay.
I wasn't going to, but now that you
now that I've tossed that out there, go ahead.
So Rabbi Gustavo Zuraski, who is an Argentinian Israeli rabbi, who is the don't remember the name of his congregation, but he's in Ashkelon in Israel. He writes that this step back has to do with the separation between the executive power and in our case, the priesthood power. This is about Aaron and his children, as we will see in this Torah portion, and Moses is very mindfully stepping back in order to allow that separation of powers.
Right, absolutely. So having that separation of powers, having that separation also of positions, of because that Moses still maintains his power, as does Aaron. Now Aaron, we are being able to see Aaron and his sons' power being elevated, so in front of the people. So that the respect is not only going to be shown to Moses, but also needs to be transferred over to Aaron and his sons. It's a little bit about what Jethro, taught us back at, in the Parashat Yitro, when, he comes to him, his father-in-law says, you can't do this all by yourself. You cannot create this all by yourself. You need to share the responsibilities, and that's of course where we get down to the justice system, but also in this case too, now Moses really understanding that, seeing how it's working, saying, all right, I'm going to take this step back because I need the people to be able to see, to witness all that Aaron and his sons are doing and going to do and provide for generations yet to come to the people of Israel. Which brings why, hi Josh, we've got you here with us.
We're gonna bring you in a second. It's coming, Josh, as we're going to priesthood.
Exactly. So, because here's the thing, Josh, you've been in this background. You have been watching these videos on the multiple screens and listening and doing the equalizing of the voices. I mean, everything that goes into production, and have been there in that background. And we're so excited to bring you to the foreground now. And I want to just kind of throw out a question to you, Josh, which is, you being in the forefront is not
Josh and his team.
Huh?
The question is for Josh and his
team. Yogi knew you were asking him the question.
Yogi as well.
We're going to go see what's interesting to him at the moment. He'll be back.
Get out of here. There we go. So Josh, between what you do with music, I mean, think about the music that you bring into our communities, and the soulful part, and now you also have this part of the production and so forth. What's the difference for you between those two? How do you experience those and your own Jewish connections?
I appreciate you asking. I mean, I actually see them having a lot more similarities than differences. I think that it all stems from creativity. I've been blessed in life that I've been, I have a creative mind, a creative brain. It's also kind of a curse sometimes. I don't see the world the same way as everybody else all the time. But I enjoy the fact that I can bring my creativity to the world in many, many different ways. And when it comes to music versus video production versus photography, and this is a virtual video production that we're doing here, I don't really see a whole lot of difference in that it's really the creative mind bringing together the miracles and the magic of technology So the technology could be the instruments, the technology could be the computer, internet, all of these things coming together to help us be creative and share creativity with the world in order to achieve the goal, which in most cases is bringing spirituality to the people who are watching. So whether I'm playing music in a temple or synagogue, or whether I'm behind the scenes producing the show so that people can watch this and have a Shabbat experience in this particular case, I think it's all based on creativity. And it's, again, for me, there's a lot more similarities than there are differences.
I think, and I think that we see that is so cool. We see that in all that you do and that you bring, and especially the joy, and how you bring that all together. It is felt, and I think that is what we see with Moses, with his, while he is not named within Tetzaveh, that presence is still there. We don't lose that essence of Moshe.
Certainly.
I would say he's not having FOMO. I think he's producing the show. I think he's behind the scenes. I think he's sitting back for a second, watching Aaron and everybody, and just making sure that things are happening the way they're supposed to happen.
So very, very interesting. So Josh, from his perspective, is moving Moses to the role of the producer. And an interesting thing about this Torah portion is that there are two ideas or two components that are pretty much about production. One of them is certainly the oil that we will need to produce in order to do the anointments that need to be done and to keep the Ner Tamid, the eternal light of the menorah lit, which is something that we will discuss in this Torah portion. And an interesting thing is that the oil is supposed to come from olives. It's olive oil. Now, olive oil, say our commentators, it's a tough one. It doesn't come out easily. It requires lots of work. You need to kind of press or squeeze, and then you need to filter it, and cold press. Pressing is actually hard work. They didn't have lots of machines, and to extract enough oil to do this production, to have like such a high quality product in order to keep the entire show of the tabernacle. I wouldn't call it show, but the entire work of the tabernacle is really difficult work. And I think that there's an interesting aspect to the investment that we do in production in order to enhance and have later on a meaningful experience. And I guess that you probably know that better than anyone else, Josh, that the investment that we do, sometimes, it's very current that when you do, a video on Facebook, you want for that to look natural, and you want that to be as it is, and to sound as it sounded. That's one approach for daily things. But there are things that we want for them to be perceived as there is a production and lots of efforts behind them. And I'd love to hear from your perspective how you see those differences and how they impact the participant or the spectator or the viewer, whatever the vocabulary is for that.
Thank you. I have two thoughts on that. One is that there's some geography and some history involved. So I have to assume somebody in the Jewish community was already really good at making olive oil. And they said, that's what we're going to use. Or somebody was producing it because there was a need for it, and that's what they were using. And they said, look, this is the best oil. We have somebody here. They're really good at this. I mean, think about it. Someone in the community was involved, right? And the rabbis then are not that different than now.
You say, Chaim had already a business.
Yes.
Instead of saying we're going to buy from Chaim, they say we're going to make. Well, that's a possibility.
Right. And then Chaim's brothers split off, and now they had two they had to buy from an equal amount. This is how it all works, by the way. But anyways, again, I feel lucky that I'm in a Jewish community that's small and connected, and everybody gets along for the most part, and that they've recognized, look, and I'm not promoting myself by any means here, but it's what I do has been a service to most of the Jewish communities in Orange County, and I'm the guy who's here to do it. So I do think that there's,
The question is, Josh, help me with this part of the question. The perception of something that has been produced. We know that today there is a tendency to use videos and products that are unfiltered and that they are well received and they are very successful because they feel authentic. There's something about authenticity in those videos that works very well. And we also know that for certain things, we want to feel that there's a huge, beautiful, well done, well thought production behind them. Now, the avodah, the work of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, and the work that the Kohanim do, is that kind of work. Mm-hmm. They're engaged in production. They're into the meticulous work of making sure that the sound doesn't sound okay. The sound is perfect. And that's why they do, that's what I was trying to say with olive oil. And it has lots of work of filtering, very similar to what you do, as Rabbi Heidi was pointing earlier, with sound. You need to clean up the sound. Like, we do that for some productions. We clean our sound, we cut the videos. So I was wondering if you have any idea or any input on the difference between those videos that seem to be very natural and those that require production. What's the difference in the viewer experience from your perspective?
So what you're talking about is how I've always defined art. So I teach at some colleges, and I've always said that, art is something that's been created that other people look at and think, how did they do that? It creates that sort of element of surprise of like, wow, how did they do that? And this is also why with a lot of contemporary arts, there's people who are debating, you put a dot on a white piece of art and someone calls that art and everyone's going, that's not art. Well, why is that not art? Well, because I could do that. My 5-year-old could have done that, right? And did yesterday in art class, okay? But the ability to create something and have people look at it and say, how could that have possibly been done is art. And then what you're talking about is the mastery of it. The ability for somebody to take art to a level that it just looks easy. That it makes people maybe even not think how was it done, but just absorb it and just take it in and enjoy it. And this takes place, by the way, with rabbis as well. I mean, every rabbi that's been on this show has had a different art form that they have specialized in. I mean, last week's episode, 2 of the rabbis sang together at the end of the episode. I don't know if you saw that. I hope you did. I hope everybody saw that because it was magical. It was totally spontaneous. And it's just, again, I'm sitting back here in the studio going, oh my gosh, how did this even happen? Like, how is this so beautiful in what they're creating right now? Well, because they've mastered the art, Rabbi Sarah and Rabbi Marsha. They're both amazing vocalists who spent their life studying music and studying voice. And that's their art and that's their mastery. So I think in this case, whether it's the olive oil being created by an artisan who creates olive oil, whether it's fine wine, created by a winemaker whose art their whole life has been making this wine. And we just drink the wine and we go, wow, this is really good wine, without any idea of how did they do this? How did they make this? But if you stop and think about it, it's art. And I think
Go ahead.
So what I want to jump in with that is, okay, so we have art, right? And beautiful points right there of how it is that we create something that is visually and and audio is beautiful and enticing. And absolutely, when we're looking at the development of the Mishkan and we're looking at all of the pomp and circumstance that is happening throughout this parasha, and that's going to continue to happen, of how it is that the bull was led there to the altar and that it's slaughtered, and I won't go into all of the things, but there is this art to it, and there's this show that is produced, and part of that was to be able to show the Israelites, this is happening here. This is not happening up on Mount Sinai. Our connections, our bringing together, ourselves with God is happening in this place. But still, there was that need for this big show. Then there's also the balancing too with when we the more natural pieces. All right, so when we go ahead and we do our live broadcasts, I do Boker Tov every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I do it from my phone for on Facebook Live, and it is natural because there are times that I have just come back from my run and I've got to get on at 9:45 because otherwise if I'm not, people are like texting going, where are you? But you get this natural piece as well. And so I think that there's this balance too between the polished, because we want to see that, we need that in some instances, but I also think there's a great value in the here I am.
Wait to it.
As opposed to the produced side of it. And because ultimately the people, they're real and they want to be a part of it. And if it's always this major show, then they're not a part of it. How do we make
so such an important distinction, Rabbi? I think that you need both. You really need both. And I think that the word that is described in Parashat Tetzaveh is that one. Is the one of the production. Is the one of once a week or once a day for this specific action, we will dedicate this kind of efforts. We are going to separate, and by definition, the word kedusha means to separate something, to set something apart. Holiness is to distinguish something. So we are going to distinguish these elements, this clothing. We'll talk about the clothing in one more second. On the other hand, there's lots of kedusha of sacredness, on consistency, on showing up as you are. That's a different kind of kedusha, right? Like that. So there are different approaches in different moments to kedusha. What's kadosh, what's sacred, on showing 3 times a week or 4 times, 3, right? 3 times a week on Facebook. I have watched that, but I'm not fully sure when they happen now. When I'm there, I leave you a comment. She's a Facebook star. So I see her. So what's sacred about it is the commitment of showing up, of time. That's as you are.
Right.
And if it was produced, it would feel ridiculous because it would feel so unauthentic.
Right.
Like it should be as you are. You should be, you should be attuned with what's happening to you in that moment. Mm-hmm. I think that the idea of Tetzaveh, for example, with the oil, has to do with the dedication for something that is apart, which is a different kind of kedusha. I want to go talking about the clothing of coming back from sports or whatever that might be. And one of the main topics of this Torah portion is the clothing, the dress of the Cohen. Mm-hmm. And there's a huge, there's an extended description of how the Cohen is going to be dressed, and I think we should wonder why such an important topic of discussion, the fact that the Cohen needs to be dressed, or the fact that the Cohen needs to be dressed in a different way. So I'd love to hear your opinions, and then I might have something to say about it.
So I think that the dress part has to do at that initial stage right there of creating the distinction of Aaron and his sons from the rest of the community. Dress them in this way so that we know who they are. All right, so that we know that these are the priests, these are the people who are doing this work. And even down to the place blood on their garments as well. It is their garments are not kept clean. I would not want to have that laundry bill.
That's back to what you say earlier, right? That's the Facebook.
Right.
That's the absolute sacred and the sacred in the mundane. the sacred I set apart and the sacred I set apart within the mundane.
Correct. So, but here's the thing, though, is that that's needed at that moment. Think about even just, I mean, how dress has evolved, even within our own communities, right? So it used to be, and it still does exist in some communities where, you know, the rabbi wore the robes, you know, and
This rabbi.
yeah. Boy, they are really hot. If you have, but there was, you know, this whole idea of the rabbi wears the robes in order to separate themselves, to be, you know, elevated, however you want to look at that. But the thing is like when when we're dressing the same, it also there's this level of, you know, I am not more holy by wearing a robe. I am not more special by wearing a robe. That does not make me different. But you know, and going back to what you said earlier, Rabbi Nico, of the idea of showing up. Think about the people, two places. One, when they come into a space, and how do I dress? What do I wear? And my comment has been, you know, of course, you know, we want to dress respectfully, but more importantly, showing up, your being there is the most important way of coming in. And you know, then, you know, here we are on this virtual world, right? This multi-access world where people are coming in via Zoom, and some are choosing to leave their cameras on, and some are choosing to leave their cameras off. But still, they're showing up.
So let me add one layer to that. Something I was doing and learned words for it from Rabbi David Young, actually, at some point. Let's give credit to our friend. So for me, when the pandemic started, it was very important to dress up for Shabbat and to put cologne. And the only thing, and I own that, and I say to my congregants always, I wasn't wearing shoes when I was streaming from home. I was fully dressed, whatever I was wearing, and with cologne and whatever. I was totally produced as I would produce myself for Shabbat at shul, at home. And there's this song from Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak is an Israeli singer that I like very much. הכוונה נותנת אמונה, he says. שירו של שף, the name of the song. And at some point says, הכוונה נותנת אמונה. The intention gives you faith, belief. And I think that in that context, what the Torah is trying to say is that we need to help the Kohanim believe in their job. They need to believe in themselves. And the clothing, the dress, is about them not only being recognized, as you were saying, Rabbi, also about themselves, recognizing what they are, who they are, and what they are supposed to be doing. They need to be reminded. They are the Kohanim, they are the priests. And what David said, Rabbi Young, so I had this idea, and I was doing it myself for a very long time. And by the time of the high holidays, he and I were speaking, and he said, "Well, I tell my congregants to wear ties and to dress up, so they feel the full connection to what we are doing, as opposed to be wearing pajamas in their living rooms. To wear a tie and to sit well and to be connected on that level." And I realized that I never communicated that to my congregants. I never said to them, guys, dress up for the high holidays, like be fully immersed in the experience. And so I made a video and invited them to dress up for the high holidays. And I think that the power of clothing is immersion. And it's the self-production that we do in order to immerse ourselves in an experience. So,
Well, if I may just jump in for a second, I think that people wear, what they wear for two reasons, as you're saying. One is, we wear what we wear for the community, the people that we're around. Okay, we either want to stand out or distinguish ourselves or whatever. But then, like you said, we do it for ourselves as well. And I think that we Reform rabbis, my outside inside perspective, are among the few in the world that are technically priests, or that technically, are leaders of the community, that don't distinguish themselves with clothing. I mean, if you go to India, for example, every single person is wearing what they wear to distinguish themselves in one way or another. I mean, we even ran across these people, I should say, in these white gowns, and they were very highly revered. And I said, who is that person over there? And she said, oh, that's a hermaphrodite. That the hermaphrodite community dresses differently to let the world know who they are, and they're held at a very high level of esteem in India. Okay, so I think that, outside of our Orange County bubble that we live in with Reform Judaism, that it's still very, very common, obviously, for priests and leaders to distinguish themselves. And the last thing I'll share with that is, if you look at the history of the book, the pharaohs, where they just left from, they dressed differently than the other people. The pharaohs had their own way to distinguish themselves as being the pharaohs, so that when people were around them, they knew who they were, and that they also, of course, I would imagine, could hold themselves in regard as, I am a pharaoh, this is what I do. So I would imagine that now that we are where we are, we being the Jews, Exodus, left Egypt, they're trying to establish the rules. How are we going to distinguish ourselves for ourselves, but also for our community?
Well, and I also think, that whole distinction and how we dress and so forth, and that being able to say this is who I am based on, you can tell by what I'm wearing and so forth, is significant. Look, the doctors will wear, coats. Although I've heard of a doctor who said, I don't wear a coat because by wearing a coat, does that make me a doctor? But think about also, all of us, every single person in one way or another, dresses, puts on makeup, puts on a favorite piece of jewelry or something, does their hair in a certain way. Why? Because it also makes them feel good. I think the other part too is the inward piece. How do I feel? How do I feel when I put this outfit on, when I dress this way, when I do my hair this way, when I wear it's also the personal part as well, in order to bring our best selves forward. So with that, I know we have to wrap this up,
yes,
because
we do.
we got to get ready for Shabbat and all of those good things. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. It was so much fun to have you here. And Rabbi Nico, as always, it is great to study with you and to share all of these wonderful teachings, and also to learn from one another. So we hope that everybody has had a wonderful time with us. And we leave you with this thought of, how is it that you present yourself? How do you bring your best self to life, to your Judaism, to doing Jewish? How do you bring that, and not only sharing it for yourself, but for the world? All right, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Mevorach, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.